He trusted him more than anyone else, but that night when Ibrahim Traoré followed his employee after work, he stepped into a truth that shook his soul. Before I take you deeper into this unbelievable story, make sure to subscribe right now, because every story we share here uncovers a hidden side of human life you should never miss. Ibrahim had always believed in loyalty. He valued honesty more than gold. But when he started noticing small signs of change around him, his heart whispered a warning that he could not ignore. For years, Ibrahim treated his employees not only as workers but as family members. He ate with them, listened to them, and supported them in every possible way. That was why he trusted this one employee more than others. He had given him opportunities. He had defended him in front of critics, and he even called him my brother in front of the whole staff. But suddenly, this man started avoiding conversations. He often left the office quickly without saying much, and there were moments when he looked nervous if anyone asked him simple questions. Ibrahim felt something was being hidden, something heavy that his employee could not speak about. The human heart is strange. It warns you before logic does. Ibrahim felt that warning every day. At first, he tried to push the thought away. He told himself, perhaps he is tired. Perhaps he has family issues. Perhaps it is nothing serious. But deep down, his instinct refused to stay silent. Then one evening, as the sun went down and the city lights began to flicker, Ibrahim noticed his employee leaving earlier than usual. This time, instead of ignoring it, he decided to follow him quietly. The streets grew darker as he walked behind him. The sound of the city faded into silence. Ibrahim kept a careful distance, afraid that one wrong step would expose him. His mind played endless questions. Was a man hiding money? Was he meeting someone secretly? Or was he planning something against him? Each step only deepened the storm inside Ibrahim's chest. The man walked faster, as if afraid of being watched. Ibrahim moved carefully, almost holding his breath. They passed markets, narrow alleys, and finally into a part of town where Ibrahim had never gone before. It was not the place where one would expect a trusted employee to be at night. Broken houses stood quietly, the smell of damp walls surrounded the air, and the silence fell heavy with every second. Ibrahim's heart beat harder. His eyes searched for meaning in every shadow. Then the man suddenly stopped near an abandoned building. He looked around, checking if anyone was following. Ibrahim froze behind a wall, his heart pounding so loudly that he thought it might give him away. For a moment, the man disappeared inside the building, and Ibrahim stood outside, his mind screaming with fear and curiosity. He finally stepped closer, opened the broken door just enough to see inside, and what he saw in that moment was nothing like he had imagined. Inside the dark room, Ibrahim's eyes struggled to adjust, but soon the faint light of a small lamp revealed a sight that made his breath stop. His employee was not sitting with criminals, nor was he hiding stolen money as Ibrahim feared. Instead, the man knelt on the floor, surrounded by children. Their faces were pale, their clothes were torn, and their eyes carried a hunger that words could never describe. Ibrahim's trusted worker opened a small bag and began placing food in their tiny hands. Bread, fruit, even a few pieces of meat that he must have saved from his own earnings. The children ate silently at first, but soon one of them smiled with pure relief, and that smile made Ibrahim's chest tighten. Ibrahim pressed his back against the wall, his thoughts spinning wildly. All this time, he had doubted his loyal man. He had imagined betrayal, lies, and deception. Yet here he was, feeding the forgotten souls of the city with his own sacrifice. Ibrahim whispered to himself, almost trembling, "Why did he never tell me?" But the answer came quickly. Pride. Some people carry their pain quietly because they do not want pity. Some people give silently because their hearts only know how to serve. As Ibrahim stood frozen, the scene became heavier. He saw the man gently wrap a blanket around a little girl who coughed in the cold air. He saw him wipe the tears of a boy who looked too weak to even stand. Then, to Ibrahim's shock, he noticed the man's own shoes were torn, his clothes almost as poor as the children he helped. It was clear he was giving away more than he had for himself. The truth cut deep. Ibrahim felt tears rise in his eyes, and yet he held them back. He did not want to disturb this sacred act of kindness. He wanted to understand more. He wanted to know why this man, who had every chance to ask for help, chose to carry such a heavy burden alone. Suddenly, one child looked toward the broken doorway, eyes wide. Ibrahim stepped back quickly. his heart racing, afraid that his presence would break the trust of the moment. The employee glanced in the same direction, suspicious, but then turned back to the children as if deciding they needed him more than his own doubts. Ibrahim exhaled slowly, realizing he had almost been caught, yet deep inside he knew he could not leave. The night grew colder, and the children finally lay down on thin mats, holding each other for warmth. The man sat quietly beside them, watching over like a guardian. Ibrahim could no longer hold his emotions. A tear slipped down his cheek. He had followed expecting to find betrayal, but what he found instead was a truth that humbled him to his core. For the first time, Ibrahim felt fear, not of betrayal, but of how wrong he had been. Ibrahim walked back slowly from the doorway, his steps unsteady as if the ground itself had lost its strength. The picture of those children refused to leave his eyes. Every face carried a silent story of pain, and the man he doubted had become their silent savior. Ibrahim kept asking himself why such truth had remained hidden for so long. He had the power to help. He had the resources to change their lives, yet his own man had chosen secrecy instead of trust. That question hurt him more than anything. Why did his employee believe he had to do this alone? He returned to his car, sat inside quietly, and stared at the steering wheel as if answers would appear there. His hands shook slightly, and he remembered every small moment of the past weeks, every strange look, every sudden departure, every restless night when he wondered about betrayal. Now the truth seemed louder than all his suspicions. This man was not betraying him. This man was carrying a weight too heavy for any one person. The silence of loyalty was sometimes louder than the noise of words, and Ibrahim realized he had failed to listen to it. But a new thought entered his mind, sharp and unsettling. If his employee was giving so much, where was he finding enough to survive himself? Was he safe? Was he in debt? Or was he pushing himself into destruction just to keep those children alive? The idea filled Ibrahim with urgency. He wanted to rush back, step inside, and confront the truth directly. Yet he held himself back. If he revealed he had followed him, the man might feel exposed, even ashamed. Ibrahim did not want that. He wanted trust, not fear. The drive back home felt longer than ever. The streets looked different now. Every light, every shadow reminded him of those children. How many others lived in corners of the city like that? How many unseen sacrifices were hidden in plain sight? He thought about his own wealth, his comforts, and felt a strange emptiness. What was the value of success if he remained blind to the suffering just outside his world? When he entered his house, silence greeted him. Usually, he would sit with his family, laugh, or discuss his day, but tonight his mind was chained to the broken shelter. He lay down in bed, but sleep refused to come. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the small girl coughing under the blanket, the boy with weak arms, and the man who gave everything without asking for anything in return. By morning, Ibrahim's decision was clear. He could no longer pretend he knew nothing. He had to confront the truth, but carefully, without breaking the dignity of the man who carried the secret mission. He wanted to help, but not in a way that looked like charity. He wanted to stand beside him, not above him. And so, Ibrahim decided to call him into his office that very day. The office felt unusually heavy that morning. Sunlight poured through the windows, but Ibrahim's mind carried only shadow from the night before. He sat at his desk, waiting. Papers lay untouched, and the ticking of the clock sounded louder than usual. Finally, the door opened, and his employee stepped inside. The man looked tired, his shoulders a little bent, as if the weight of the world rested on them. Yet his face carried the same calm expression that had fooled everyone for weeks. Ibrahim looked at him carefully, searching for signs he had missed before. His clothes were neat but worn. His shoes still carried the same marks of struggle. He stood with respect, waiting for Ibrahim to speak, not knowing that the man before him already knew his secret. Ibrahim wanted to ask directly, to demand answers, but his heart stopped him. If he spoke without care, he could wound the very dignity that made this man noble. "Sit down," Ibrahim said softly, and the man obeyed. There was silence, long enough to make the air heavy. Then Ibrahim leaned forward and asked, "Tell me honestly, how are you these days? Not work, not tasks, you. How are you?" The man froze. He blinked as if unsure how to respond. No one asked him such a question. After a pause, he forced a smile and answered, "I am fine, sir." But Ibrahim could hear the unspoken truth behind those words. He decided to test gently. I saw you leaving in a hurry last night. You did not tell anyone where you were going. The man's fingers twitched. His eyes moved to the ground. He hesitated, then replied, Just personal matters, nothing important. The answer cut Ibrahim's heart. He wanted to tell him, I know where you went. I saw everything. But he stopped again. If he revealed it now, shame might crush the man's spirit. Instead, Ibrahim chose another path. Sometimes we all carry personal matters, he said slowly, but sometimes sharing them makes the weight lighter. The man looked up briefly, his eyes moist for a second, before he quickly lowered them again. Some matters are not easy to share, he whispered. That moment told Ibrahim everything. His suspicion was now certainty. The man would not speak, not yet. His silence was not because of guilt, but because of pride and humility. Ibrahim felt torn. He wanted to hug him, to tell him he was not alone, but he held himself back. Very well, Ibrahim said, pretending to let it go. If you ever need anything, you must tell me. My door is open always. The man nodded, grateful, but still hiding behind his silence. As he left the office, Ibrahim watched him closely. A decision formed in his mind, one that would change both their lives. If the man would not speak, then Ibrahim himself would step into that hidden world again. That night, Ibrahim prepared to follow him once more. Night returned, and with it came the weight of Ibrahim's decision. He waited in his car near the office, watching carefully as his employee stepped out once more. The man walked with the same hurried steps as before, unaware of the eyes that followed him in silence. Ibrahim's heart beat heavily, but this time the fear was different. It was not fear of betrayal, but fear of what he might discover further, fear that perhaps the burden was far greater than he imagined. The man moved through the same dim streets, carrying a warm bag that looked heavier than it should. Ibrahim followed quietly, his mind whispering questions with every step. Was the bag filled with food again, or was it something else tonight? Did he always go to the same place, or were there more hidden corners of suffering across the city? The more Ibrahim thought, the deeper his curiosity grew. Finally, the man turned toward the broken shelter once again. The children were waiting, their faces lit with faint hope as they saw him arrive. He placed the bag down and began distributing food, bread, fruit, and even some medicine this time. Ibrahim watched from the shadows, his throat tightening. But then something new happened, something that cut Ibrahim deeper than before. The man removed his own jacket, worn yet still warmer than what the children had, and wrapped it around the same coughing girl Ibrahim had seen the night before. The girl's small hands clutched the jacket with gratitude, and the man simply smiled, hiding the cold that would now bite his own body. Ibrahim felt his eyes burn with tears. How could a man with so little give so much? But the night was not done with surprises. After the food was shared, the man reached into his pocket and took out money, his own salary, clearly saved piece by piece. He handed it to an older boy, perhaps the eldest among them, and whispered something. Ibrahim leaned closer, straining to hear. The words struck his heart like thunder. Promise me you will use this for books, not for bread. If you learn, you will never remain hungry. The boy nodded, tears streaming down his cheeks. Ibrahim covered his mouth with his hand, struggling not to cry aloud. This was not only kindness, it was vision, sacrifice, and hope for a future that the world had denied these children. But just as Ibrahim felt overcome with emotion, a sudden sound broke the fragile silence. A group of rough-looking men appeared near the shelter, shouting angrily. They demanded to know why the man was helping these children instead of paying them for protection. The children froze in fear, and the man stood quickly, shielding them with his body. Ibrahim's heart raced. Danger had entered the scene, and for the first time, he realized the secret mission was not only about sacrifice, it was also about survival. The rough men stepped closer, their voices harsh, echoing through the broken walls of the shelter. The children clung to each other, trembling, while the man stood firm in front of them. His face carried no fear, only determination. "These children are not your concern," he said calmly. But his words only fueled their anger. One of them pushed him hard, and he stumbled, yet he refused to move aside. Ibrahim's blood boiled. He had seen enough from the shadows. This was no longer the time to remain hidden. Without a second thought, Ibrahim stepped into the shelter. The men froze when they recognized him. His presence carried weight. His name was known even in the darkest corners of the city. His voice cut through the tension like a blade. "If you ever touch him or these children again, you will answer to me." His eyes burned with authority, and the men, though reluctant, backed away slowly. Their threats faded into silence as they disappeared into the night. The children looked at Ibrahim with wide eyes, confused yet hopeful. But it was a man's expression that struck deeper. Shock, shame, and relief mixed on his face. He whispered, "You should not be here, sir." Ibrahim walked closer, his voice softer now. "I should have been here long ago," he replied. His eyes glistened as he looked at the weak, fragile children. "All this time, I doubted you. I thought you were hiding betrayal. Instead, you were hiding your kindness. You carried this alone when you never had to." The man lowered his head, struggling to hold back tears. "I did not want pity," he confessed. "I only wanted to give. These children have no one, and I could not watch them fade away. I thought it was my duty alone." Ibrahim placed his hand firmly on his shoulder. "No, from today, it is our duty." The words filled the air with a promise stronger than any contract. The children's eyes brightened, hope returning to faces that had long forgotten it. That night changed everything. Ibrahim did not simply offer money. He rebuilt the shelter. He brought doctors, teachers, and proper meals. The man who once carried the burden alone now had a partner who shared his vision. Together, they gave those children not just food, but dignity, not just blankets, but a future. But the lesson remained carved in Ibrahim's heart. He had almost lost trust in the very man who showed what true loyalty and humanity meant. He realized that real strength is not measured by wealth or power, but by the courage to sacrifice for those who cannot return the favor. As Ibrahim watched the children laughing weeks later in their new home, he felt tears once more. But this time, they were not tears of guilt or sorrow. They were tears of pride, because he had not just discovered his employee's secret. He had discovered the true meaning of humanity.